आप सभी को नमस्कार. Namaskar to all of you. By your permission, can we start with the press conference today? Thank you so much. The Vijay Mallya case has been a classic case of duping the people of India of their money, of their hard-earned money. And we have seen as to how over a period of time, there have been certain questions which had been looming large in this case. The question was, if an ordinary man goes to take loan, then the paperwork has to be complete. Only after a complete paperwork and after a lot of grill does an ordinary man is entitled to gain a petty loan. But how is it that a businessman like Mr. Vijay Mallya could procure loans worth 9,000 crore without proper paperwork, without a proper account, and how could he dupe a consortium of bank and the government of India was a question which had been looming large. And the oft asked question was, were there certain hidden hands who were pulling the string to see to it that loans were granted to Vijay Mallya's sinking airline? We had heard of sinking ship, but here we have a sinking airline. There had been speculations ripe across the political circle and the people of this country that is it that the party which became the sinking ship tried to bail out the sinking airline? Was the sinking ship helping the sinking airline? Was a question which had been oft asked. And I think gradually we are moving towards the answer. Two leading news channels, I would say about 2 days ago, CNN Network 18 broke a story which flashed certain, in fact, letters. And today, while we were proceeding towards this press conference, we saw that even Times Now, one of the leading English news channels, was flashing some documents. So naturally, certain questions have been brought in over here. Detail by detail, we would go through the pursuit. Number one, before I move to the details, let's have a backdrop of what happened in Vijay Mallya case, a small timeline. The first loan to Vijay Mallya's company was granted in September 2004. 7th February 2008, the second loan to Vijay Mallya's company was granted. 30th April 2009, his company became an NPA, a non-performing asset. Despite that, on 21st December 2010, restructuring of the loan was done. Despite it being declared an NPA, restructuring of the loan was done on 21st December 2010. Let me remind you, my friends, that even the Supreme Court of India had asked as to why the banks continued to lend money if they had managed to recover only 1/10 of what they had lent. Even the Supreme Court was quite critical as to why the banks were lending money to Vijay Mallya's company despite the fact that they could only recover 1/10 of what they had granted. So the big question was, who were the driving force behind the banks granting this loan to Vijay Mallya? The astonishing fact is, even while there was a negative financial net worth and very poor rating of the company, and despite the fact that the accounts were not in order, why was Mallya given a loan? This is the backdrop on which certain facts would be kept and placed in front of you today. We have certain emails, certain correspondences, and certain letters which would in fact expose in front of the people of the country and the media of this country the hands which were pulling the string. Not the hand that Rahul Gandhi saw in gods, but the hand that was corrupt. So the corrupt hand story begins now. We have a letter number 1. This letter was written by Vijay Mallya to the then Prime Minister, Shri Manmohan Singh ji. Date of the letter is October 4th, 2011. A copy of the letter was sent to advisor of the Prime Minister, Shri Manmohan Singh, that is Mr. T.K.A. Nair, who is a reputed bureaucrat of that time, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, Mr. Pulak Chatterjee, And you all know Pulak Chatterjee of Sanjay Baru's fame. Sanjay Baru wrote a letter, wrote a book, The Accidental Prime Minister, in which Pulak Chatterjee had a special mention that every day evening Mr. Chatterjee had to run with all the files to 10 Janpad, even before the Prime Minister could go through it. That means there is a connect within the Congress party also. A larger story would emerge. So this letter, which I show here to you, this letter by Vijay Mallya to Manmohan Singh ji said urgent, and we have October 4, 2011 as the date. The Honorable Prime Minister, Government of India, New Delhi, respected Prime Minister. Certain lines need to be mentioned out of this letter. I quote, Mallya says, I had also informed your good self that we had approached a consortium of banks led by the State Bank of India to grant us additional financial support urgently by way of increase in working capital and short-term loan. We as promoters have pumped in 550 crores into the airline this year itself. I was very relieved, Mr. Mallya continues saying, I was very relieved and pleased when you responded positively and expressed support for Kingfisher Airlines, which is the single largest airline in our country, operating 380 flights daily to 60 destinations. So Mr. Mallya was extremely relieved, and he was very pleased when Mr. Manmohan Singh, the then Prime Minister, responded extremely positively and expressed support for Mallya. Support was there. Because of this support, Mr. Mallya was relieved and pleased. And then Mr. Mallya continues to say to Mr. Manmohan Singh, you had asked me to follow up with Mr. T.K.A. Nair, which I did, and I am deeply appreciative of the fact that Mr. Nair immediately spoke to the concerned people in the ministries involved. So Mr. Mallya met Mr. Prime Minister. He apprised that he needed certain help. Mr. Prime Minister guaranteed him of help. Mr. Prime Minister told him to meet his top bureaucrat, Mr. T.K.A. Nair. Mr. Mallya speaks to Mr. T.K.A. Nair, goes and meets Mr. T.K.A. Nair, and Mr. T.K.A. Nair, the principal advisor to the then Prime Minister of the country, Mr. Manmohan Singh, talks to all other concerned ministries to see to it that Mr. Vijay Mallya is helped. And then Mr. Vijay Mallya says, I am once again appealing you for your kind and urgent intervention. Once again. So once he had appealed, he was pleased and he was relieved because the Prime Minister had helped him then. Once again we are in trouble, and once again I am appealing you for your kind and urgent intervention. I would be most grateful for your immediate intervention and relief as requested. These are the contents of the letter, and here we have the sign of Mr. Mallya. This is the letter to the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Manmohan Singh. So, this is the first set of letter which has been written to the Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh. Now, there are certain things which we should continue in the timeline. When was this letter written? This letter was written on October 4th, 2011. Now, what happens on 14th November 2011? On 14th November 2011, if you would follow the timeline, Mr. Prime Minister then, Mr. Manmohan Singh, while interacting with the reporters and media, said, and I quote, we have to find ways to get Kingfisher out of trouble. We have to find ways to get Kingfisher out of trouble. These are the exact words of the then Prime Minister, which I place within quotes. And why was Mr. Manmohan Singh interacting then with the press? He was interacting with the press on the backdrop of the then Aviation Minister, Mr. Vailar Ravi's effort to organize a bailout package to the airline. If you would remember, a bailout package was being worked out for Mr. Mallya, and in this context, after this letter, Mr. Manmohan Singh says that we have to see to it that we in fact bail out Kingfisher. And then you would remember as to how a bailout package was given, and you would also remember, and I'm extremely sorry to state, that though the Income Tax Department had frozen the account of Mr. Mallya, Because of the insistence of the then Prime Minister, the Income Tax Department was soft on Mr. Mallya, the accounts were unfrozen, and in fact, the process of bailout began. Then we have a second letter. This second letter is by Mr. Manmohan Singh, is to Mr. Manmohan Singh ji, the then Prime Minister of the country, dated November 22nd, 2011. And I have the letter with you. This is written by Mr. Vijay Mallya to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, date being 22nd November 2011. What does he say? I quote, "You were kind enough to state that connectivity in our country was of paramount importance and the government would assist us as requested. I am also grateful to your positive statement of support for Kingfisher Airline that you made during your return from Maldives." The statement I read out as to how Kingfisher has to be bailed out. So Mr. Vijay Mallya is thanking the Prime Minister. I approached you and then you helped me out by speaking in favor of Kingfisher. I am seeking your kind indulgence once again. So again and again, the kind indulgence of the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, was sought. Then he writes, and I quote, "We have now reached a stage where the release of requested funds is highly time critical. Some funds have to be released by the banks, and these are extremely time critical and needs to happen in the next 2 days to avoid our loans from banks becoming classified as non-performing assets or NPA, and for the airline to continue operating 300 daily flights as per its temporary schedule, reduced schedule." So here, Mr. Vijay Mallya is quite categorical in stating that certain time-critical fund releasing has to be done by the banks, and in which your indulgence, the Prime Minister's indulgence, is extremely important. And finally, he says, "In the meantime, I would request you your most urgent intervention and assistance." So this is the letter which bears not only the signature of Mr. Mallya over here, you can see the signature of Mr. Mallya, but you can also see the logo of Kingfisher. So naturally, in a letter after letter, written to none other than one of the highest constitutional posts of the country, the Prime Minister, Mr. Mallya says that he needs the indulgence of the Prime Minister, and he needs the Prime Minister to immediately to see to it that certain fund is released. And then we have a third letter. Up till now, I have shown you two letters written by Mr. Vijay Mallya to Mr. Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister. Now we have a third letter, and apart from Mr. Manmohan Singh, a second player enters into the fray. This letter is written by Mr. Vijay Mallya, the defaulter, to the second player, Mr. P. Chidambaram. Date of this letter is 21st March 2013, and the subject of the letter is, it is written categorically as the subject, State Bank of India. To the Finance Minister of the country, the defaulter, Mr. Vijay Mallya, writes, on State Bank of India, which was heading, if you remember, the consortium of the banks. Now, what does this letter has in offing? I have the letter with me. This is the letter. It bears the UB Group, Vijay Mallya's name over here. Letter to Mr. P. Chidambaram, March 21st, 2013. March 21st, 2013. And what does the letter say? The letter means to say, to seek no objection certificate, NOC, from SBI, that is State Bank of India, and its subsidiaries for USL, meaning United Spirits Limited, to issue new shares on preferential basis. New shares on preferential basis to Diageo, which has been approved by shareholders, but which also requires lenders' consent as well. This preferential allotment will bring in approximately rupees 2,000 crores into the USL. So Mr. Vijay Mallya says, please, Mr. Chidambaram, see to it that the State Bank of India gives us a preferential treatment and allows us an NOC, that is a no objection certificate, so that certain shares can be issued and we can raise rupees 2,000 crore, a huge amount, from the State Bank of India. Then he says, and I quote, "Sir, while SBI," sir meaning Mr. Chidambaram, "Sir, while SBI may be understandably upset with the status of loans of Kingfisher Airlines, it is most unfortunate that they refuse to even meet to discuss a way forward." And all this, they're crying in front of Mr. Chidambaram. Their attitude towards USL, which is highly successful company, is even more unfortunate, as it will deny FDI by DIGO. I seek your urgent and kind intervention in facilitating a meeting with SBI all-round value destruction, before all-round value destruction takes place. So here Mr. Vijay Mallya wants that I want the SBI to issue a NOC so that we can usurp more money, and I want your intervention. Mr. Chidambaram, you have to urgently intervene to see to it that State Bank, which is not even allowing me inside to meet them, the State Bank, which is annoyed with us, somehow listens to what we say, and I need your urgent help, Mr. Chidambaram. So this is the third letter. And now we move towards a very important letter, that is a fourth letter. This fourth letter on 22nd March 2013. This letter was on 21st March 2013. Look at the speed with which work was done. On 21st March 2013, we have this letter to Mr. Chidambaram by Mr. Vijay Mallya. Now, just a day after this letter, the fourth email. Up till now, I was showing you letters. Now we have an email transaction between Mr. Vijay Mallya and Mr. Ravi Nidugadi, who is the UB Group CFO, who was then the UB Group CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. And what does Mr. Vijay Mallya write in this email to his advisor? This is the email, and the email is on 22nd March, one day after he had, in fact, cried in front of Chidambaram for urgent help. And he says to his advisor, "There has been some positive developments following my meeting with FM. Some positive developments following my meeting with Finance Minister and SGP speaking to him." SGP may be some advisor of Mr. Mallya. So there has been some positive development. After he rebuked PAM yesterday, after he, means Chidambaram, rebuked PAM yesterday, SBI Bangalore have called USL and now willing to issue NOC for preferential allotment. Mr. Chidambaram was submitted a letter by Vijay Mallya on 21st of March. Mr. Chidambaram calls up the bank, rebukes the concerned person, and what is the result? The same SBI, the State Bank of India, which did not want to give any preferential treatment to Vijay Mallya, did not want to issue these preferential shares to Mr. Mallya, did not want to indulge with Mr. Mallya because Mr. Mallya was a defaulter. He was owner of a sinking airline. State Bank did not want to give out loan to Mr. Mallya. The same State Bank of India, the Bangalore branch, was ready, after receiving the rebuke from the finance minister of the country, to see to it that they issue NOC for preferential allotment. I believe that SBI would have also got directions to meet with us. So now the SBI has been rebuked by the finance minister. Shares have been issued. NOC has been issued. Now I think they have also been rebuked and told, "Jaake milo Mallya sahab se, aise nahi hota hai." So all this was done by Mr. P. Chidambaram and Mr. Manmohan Singh, the then Prime Minister. At the end, all that I would like to say is the hands, the corrupt hands which were pulling the strings of the banks, the corrupt banks which saw to it that Mr. Vijay Mallya moves ahead, getting the loans, though he's not expected to get a loan. The hands belong to the then Prime Minister and the then Finance Minister. And let me tell you, if I borrow something from Sanjay Baru's book, The Accidental Prime Minister, after all, Manmohan Singh ji was an accidental Prime Minister. Every file from underneath him was snatched by Pulak Chatterjee, as is mentioned in the book, and was taken to 10 Janpath. So does the hand of 10 Janpath also pull the string is a big question. And I believe there are certain questions which have been left to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, and the then Finance Minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram, to answer. Rahul Gandhi has been exposed completely. In fact, Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi should come out in the public and they should say as to on whose behalf were Mr. Manmohan Singh and Mr. Chidambaram trying to bail out Vijay Mallya. On whose behest were the loans sanctioned to Vijay Mallya, though the banks were not ready to sanction the loan to Vijay Mallya. It's a very big question, and none other than the President and the Vice President of the Congress should answer this.